Level Your Life with Mindy. I'm Mindy Duff, your host. And today I am going to give you a little bit of my story, a little background. I was talking with my oldest son just the other day, and he had listened to part of my podcast, and he was hearing the person I was interviewing share a little bit of her story. And he said, "Hey, Mom, have you ever shared your story?" And I said, "Well, no, son, I haven't." And he just couldn't believe that. He said, "Well, all the YouTubers and everybody that has a podcast has shared their how we got here story. You have to do that." Okay, so per request of my almost 13-year-old, here's a little bit about me and how I got to become a holistic health and nutrition coach. So initially, I've always been a little bit into health and wellnessy type things, to some degree. I wouldn't say that I was ever super healthy before, just even a few years ago. I think I was more into I knew I needed to work out. I knew working out was a thing that you should do. So I would do that. But even as recently as when I was pregnant with this almost 13-year-old son of mine, I remember eating just Twinkies because that was the only thing that sounded good, and just not really thinking anything of it, like eating horribly just because I could. And when you're in your teens and your 20s, you can get away with that a little bit more. Not that you should, but it doesn't necessarily give you consequences right away. And so, yeah, I rolled with that for quite a while. It wasn't until after that child was born, and there's something about, maybe parents, you can agree with me on this one or not, when they hand you in the hospital your little newborn baby, and they're all just like fresh and clean, and they haven't been tainted with McDonald's or anything like that yet. You want to give them the very, very best. So I started becoming a little more interested in nutrition, just because I had a little baby to feed. As he got excuse me, as he got older, I made a lot of his baby food. And after the birth of my daughter, I was making, good nutritious food, baby food for her as well. But then I was kind of focusing, as my older son had gotten a little into more grown up food. We were all kind of eating a little bit better, a lot of things from scratch, lots and lots of gluten though, because I didn't know what I know now. So definitely wasn't the most healthiest diet, but again, we were eliminating chemicals and things like that, just because I wanted healthier food for my family. Fast forward to when that child was in first grade, he'd been having some digestive issues, which I won't go into detail with, but we took him to, the doctor and just different people. And by just pure luck or chance, whatever you want to call it, there was um, a nutrition coach in the town that I lived in. And it was a very rural town. So it was kind of amazing that she even was working there. So Michelle, if you're listening, thank you so much for starting us down this path. But she suggested some different testing and some things. So we did a food testing with him and discovered that, OMG, he had 49 different food sensitivities. And that was a lot, because I remember getting those results and meeting with the naturopath that went over the results with us. I think it was like 5:00 in the afternoon, and your appointment's done, and okay, here are the 49 foods that he should not eat. Well, great. What am I supposed to feed him? Because it's supper time, like right now. And some of the food, let me be clear, these are not allergies. So maybe you've heard of someone that has like a peanut allergy, where if they get exposed to it, they really could die if they don't get the right medications. This is not that, although it is still a serious concern. And especially, for a parent, you just found out that your son shouldn't eat blueberries. Well, you're not going to want to give him blueberries, right? So I had 49 different foods to kind of navigate. And God bless Michelle for kind of holding my hand and walking me through that process, taking me on the grocery store tour, and kind of learning a different way to eat. I learned a lot about gut health and all kinds of things there because of that kiddo and that experience. Fast forward just a couple more years later, and I just, my background is actually in education. I was an elementary music teacher for many, many years. And I just decided, I still really love teaching, but I had learned so much about food and nutrition that I just wanted to share that knowledge with people instead of just teaching, quarter note, eighth note. That stuff's important too, though. Support your fine arts. But I just kind of made a shift and I went back and got certified, and I started my own business. So that's how I got where I am today. So there you go, son of mine. There's my background story. So you can be happy now. um, but I thought on this podcast, instead of just telling you all about me, that maybe I could share a little bit about what I have learned along the way, because I have learned so much along the way and I'm still learning. So these are kind of my top tips, the Mindy Duff Reader's Digest version of how to be super, super healthy. And it kind of just breaks down into a few different categories. And I'm going to just kind of break each of these categories down for you. We're going to talk about physical health, spiritual health, and then surprisingly, finding your purpose is in there as well. So why is a nutrition lady talking about that? We'll get to that in a minute here. But physical health, let's start with that for just a second. And, with a background as a holistic health and nutrition coach, you knew I was going to go here. We're going to start with nutrition. Quite honestly, I probably shouldn't say this, but this is the least important of all three categories in regards to, your overall health and wellness and how you feel, but it's still super important. So just because I said it was the least important doesn't mean it's not important, because otherwise it wouldn't be on this list. But it really can accelerate things and you'll just feel so much better. So we're talking about it. When your physical body is in distress, whether it's from pain or excess weight or a chronic condition, it's really hard to focus on anything else. And when your physical body doesn't feel well, you're tired and you barely have the energy to get through your day. And in fact, you likely don't even have the energy to get through your day. Maybe you're taking naps, falling asleep on the couch, eating Ben and Jerry's and doing that instead of, tackling that mountain of laundry in your bedroom, because who has the energy for laundry, right? So if your physical body isn't feeling tip top, it's still possible, to live a nice, fulfilling life, but it's just harder. And I don't know about you, but I'm all about easy. So let's discuss the meat and potatoes, ha ha ha, pun intended, of how to get and keep your body ready for action here. So nutrition, Michael Pollan says it best in his book, In Defense of Food. He says, eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. By the way, that is one of the best books. It should be required reading for all humans on the planet. You just need to read it if you haven't already. Again, it's called In Defense of Food by Michael Pollan. So let's break down this quote just a little bit. So eat real food. Look at the ingredients of whatever it is that you're eating. Can you pronounce everything? Does it look like food you might have in your pantry at home, or is it a chemical shitstorm? The more real food that you eat, regardless of how much, the better health you're going to find yourself in. And conversely, the more processed garbage that you eat, well, you've heard the term, you are what you eat, right? And now the second part of his quote talks about not eating too much. Now, this is less important than what you're eating, because it takes a lot of carrots to gain a pound of fat on your body. But it's still worth noting. Now, you don't have to clean your plate. Quit eating before you feel stuffed. And when he says mostly plants, science supports this. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone quit eating meat, although some of you listening will probably feel better if you do. But the fact of the matter is, you get more bang for your buck from plants. Again, other foods are important too. And notice that he doesn't say eat only plants. He just says to eat mostly plants. And I am a firm believer that everyone is different. And while you may feel great eating as a strict vegan, your neighbor might need a steak once in a while to feel top notch. But plants have so many different vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and phytonutrients. It's just going to be worth your while to increase the amount of plants that you're eating. Now, a few years ago, someone did a very non-scientific study on this, even though it wasn't an official scientific study. I think it illustrates the point that plants are good for you. So I'm going to talk about it anyway. So there was this guy, he was in like his 20s, and he made a documentary. And I really wish I had the name of that documentary. If I can think of it, I'll tell you. Anyway, he had a lot of super athletic, fit friends. So some of them owned a CrossFit gym together. Some of them were ultra marathon runners. Those are like people that run 100 miles on purpose. It's an ultra marathon, crazy, but what they like it. And some people were just regular runners, but they were all super fit, athletic people. And he got them to agree to this informal study. And all they had to do was agree to do 2 blood draws before and after the study, and to drink this smoothie that he would bring them every day. And now these smoothies were not anything that you can't do at home. They were made of water, veggies, and fruit. So it was as many veggies as he could get in there, and then as much fruit so it would taste really good. And he made one giant batch with like the biggest blender I've ever seen in my life. So they were all drinking the same exact batch. There was no protein powders. There was no supplements of any kind. It was just plants and water. Some of the people chugged it first thing in the morning when he dropped it off. Some of them sipped on it kind of gradually throughout the day. And at the end of this study, which was only a few weeks long, it was like 6 weeks long, some of the participants reported things like faster running times and other performance related improvements. But the real magic, I think, was in the results from the blood draws. One thing that he tested was C-reactive protein, which is a marker for inflammation. And in case you didn't know, inflammation in your body is no bueno. We don't want it. So all of the participants, all of their inflammation decreased, and some decreased dramatically. There was one guy that went from like 14 to like 2 or 0.2 even, maybe. I don't remember. It was unreal because this guy was like doing the races because he wanted the beer and the pizza afterwards. He was not a nutrition person at all. And during the course of this study, he continued to eat poorly. They all ate their regular diets. They just added in all of these extra fruits and veggies. So lots of fruits and veggies in your diet do make a difference, even if you still are eating some junk food. Okay. So eat more plants. That is my biggest nutritional recommendation, more plants. Now, aside from this general recommendation of eating real food, not too much, mostly plants, it's also important for you to pay attention to how you feel when you eat, what foods make you feel good. And everybody's different, but this will be your strongest guide when it comes to knowing what's best for you. Now, let's talk about physical activity just a little bit. In case you haven't figured it out, that whole eat healthy and exercise advice hasn't changed over the last 100 years, and there's a reason why. It works, okay? Now, instead of me sitting here and telling you that, oh, CrossFit's the best exercise, or you should look into yoga or lift weights to get into the best shape, I'm going to suggest something a little bit different, at least for starters. Do what you love. Whatever kind of intentional movement you enjoy, do more of that. If it helps, think back to when you were a little kid. Did you play a lot of basketball? Did you ride your bike everywhere? Were you a swimmer? Those are some good clues as to what you should be doing for physical activity now that you might enjoy. Do not force yourself into a grueling workout just because you think that's what you need to do to be healthy. But you can do grueling workouts if you like them. Some people love it, and good for you. But if you don't enjoy it, you're not as likely to stick with it. So find something that you like doing, something you'll actually look forward to doing. And after all, we are here to enjoy life, and that includes your workouts. Another component to our physical health is sleep. Now, I probably will do an entire podcast on sleep because it's so fascinating, so important. But right now, I'm just going to include just a short little note. Some of us wear sleep deprivation like a badge. We pride ourselves on being able to function with just such a small amount of sleep. Oh, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night. Or we use it as a complaining tool, something we can tell people about to get sympathy. I'm going to suggest you stop doing both things and just simply get more sleep. In the book Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, he describes in great detail, all supported by copious amounts of research, why sleep is so important. And I highly encourage you to read this book. But I'll summarize it for you now. Every area of your life, from bodily functions to emotional responses, relationships, your career, everything is dramatically impacted by how much and what kind of sleep you got last night. It is possibly the most important thing you can do for yourself. So please aim to get at least 7 to 8 hours of actual sleep each night. And by the way, that means you're going to have to lay there for like 8 or 9 hours because we wake up during the night. So your future self thanks you in advance. And so do all of your coworkers and the people that you live with, etc. Another part of our physical health is often overlooked in society, but it's so important. And that's mental health. If you don't have good mental health, it's going to negatively impact every area of your life. And I feel like we're made to feel like we need to be mentally tough and that we're a burden to others if we share our mental struggles or if we reach out for help. We're made to feel like we're some sort of weakling, when in fact, the opposite is actually true, because it takes great strength to realize that you need support and to seek it out, whether that's in the form of a counselor or a therapist, or even just something simple like, I need a vacation. I just got to get out of here for a little bit, change of scenery. And by the way, self-care is something that you do regularly, not just going to the spa for your birthday, or getting a haircut once every 8 weeks or something like that. Self-care is going to look different for everyone. And maybe for you, self-care is just setting healthy boundaries within your relationships. Maybe it's making sure you get enough sleep. Maybe what you really need is some alone time each day. And that's okay. Don't feel guilty for asking what you need. It's going to be to everyone's benefit. Again, you've probably heard the put your oxygen mask on analogy before. Lisa Nichols has a great quote about filling your own cup first, and then you can serve others from the saucer, the overflow. And I think those are great things to think about. But are you actually doing it? That's putting it into practice is the next thing. So if you're happy and you're not overbooked and you're mentally stable, you're going to be a much greater parent, coworker, friend, spouse, partner, sibling, everything. So it might be worth, taking some time to sit down someday and make a little list of how do you fill your own cup and how do you deal with stress. So those are all important things with our physical health. The last thing that I wanted to talk about here is your spiritual health. And now that your physical body is all feeling great and mentally you're in a good place, you're going to be more readily available to receive some spiritual insight. Now, I'm not delving into the topic of religion here. To me, that is something totally different. And while you can belong to a specific religion and be very spiritual, you can also belong to a religion and not be spiritual, as well as not belong to a religion and be very spiritual, right? So just so we're all on the same page here, when I'm talking about spirituality, I'm talking about a feeling of connectedness to something beyond the self. So a universal consciousness, source energy, God, the divine, I don't care what you call it, but we're all talking about the same thing here, essentially. So when you feel a connection to a power greater than yourself, you can open up to guidance from that source. And that's when you really can start seeing some magic happen in your life. Some people are really big proponents of prayer. I don't have a problem with that at all. I'm not going to focus on prayer. Personally, I think of prayer generally as more as asking for things, and that's totally cool. There are a lot of benefits there as well. But when you can be still and listen for the responses, that's where the magic happens. You want to be sure that you're prioritizing that part. So how do you do it? One of the most important steps that you can take is to begin a meditation practice. There has been so much research done on the effects of meditation. It's an incredibly powerful tool. It helps with stress and anxiety, chronic pain, depression, heart disease, high blood pressure. The list just goes on and on and on. So, again, if you're a human on the planet, you can benefit from meditation. So, um, I hear a lot of people say, well, it's so hard. I've tried it, but I couldn't do it. Right. And if that's you, you're in good company. It's so common. In fact, I've tried lots of times only to get frustrated that I didn't think I was doing it right. And I've quit too. So, first of all, let me tell you that you probably are doing it right. So, just ease up a little bit on your expectations. A lot of people think that the point is just to clear your mind of all thoughts, and then they get frustrated because they're having thoughts. The next thing they know, they're making their grocery list. Oh, shoot, I was supposed to be not thinking about anything. Okay, I'm back to not thinking about anything. And oh my gosh, I forgot that I need to make an appointment for my car to get an oil change. Oh, shoot, I'm thinking again. Okay. Thoughts are 100% part of meditation. You may not get to a point where you aren't thinking at all. Or if you do, it only lasts for like a second before you go, hey, I'm doing it. I'm not thinking. Oh, shit, that was a thought, right? So let go of the idea that your mind needs to be devoid of all thoughts because there are many, many, many different ways to meditate. I suggest trying several and seeing what feels the lightest and best for you. There are tons of guided meditations on YouTube. Try a few out, find one with a voice that you don't hate and start there. And there's a million apps too. I like the Calm app, Headspace. There's plenty others. Or you don't need any of that. You can just sit still and focus on your breath. Me personally, I learned from a transcendental meditation instructor. I really, really like it, but I am willing to admit that it's probably not for everyone. One of the analogies that they do teach in transcendental meditation, I do find particularly helpful. So that is if you can imagine your thoughts come from a deep place within you, like the bottom of an ocean, and each new thought rises to the surface of the water in like a little bubble. So on the surface of the water, we have hundreds of bubbles, all these little thoughts floating around, and they're all vying for our attention. And as you meditate, you start to sink deeper and deeper into the ocean where there's less and less thoughts around you. And you may see a thought bubble rise up and decide for a time to rise up with it. But then you remember your destination is at the bottom of the ocean where it's nice and still. So you can hop off that bubble and start sinking back down. So the main takeaway here is to just do it. Even if you can only get 5 minutes in, that's better than none. A great recommendation is 20 minutes once or twice a day. More than that is probably unnecessary. That's probably plenty. I do suggest working up to 20 minutes if you can, just because, sometimes it takes 15 minutes just for your mind to even settle down. So, once you've become comfortable with meditation and you're more easily able to still your mind, and notice I didn't say silence it, just still the mind. Now you can start working on developing your intuition. And we all have intuition. We were born with it. Maybe you don't call it intuition. Maybe you just say, I don't know, I just had a gut feeling about that. But as life gets noisier and noisier, we tend to tune it out more and more. And once you're able to still your mind, then you're allowing yourself to tap into that intuition more easily. Again, sometimes we call this a gut instinct, and I guarantee you it has helped you before. So, take a second right now and think about a time in your life when you just knew something and then you were right. Maybe you heard a little voice inside you that said, slow down while you're driving. And then moments later, the car in front of you slammed on its brakes. I'll share just a quick little story about a time fairly recently that I trusted my intuition. It was not dramatic or life and death, but it made an impact on me. So the floral shop where I live was participating in something called Pedal It Forward. So basically you buy a bouquet of flowers and they give you one for free to give away to somebody else. So you get two bouquets for the price of one. And they posted their info on their Facebook page the night before, encouraging people to sign up ahead of time. And I signed up, and then I laid in bed that night thinking about who I wanted to give the flowers to. And I almost always give some to my mom for something like this. She lives in my town. But this time when I asked myself, who should I give those flowers to? Almost instantly, the little voice in my head said, Darlene. And now Darlene is an elderly lady that lives in my town. She's lived alone since her husband passed away several years prior. I knew who she was. I live in a super small town. We've gone Christmas caroling there before, but I really don't know her. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of times that I've ever even had a conversation with her. I just knew who she was. Um, so I thought it was kind of odd that she popped into my head, but I decided, okay, well, I'll see how I feel about it in the morning. And so the next morning, I stopped at the floral shop. I got my flowers. I headed home. And as I was approaching Darlene's house, I asked myself again, okay, should I give her the flowers or should they go to somebody else? Because honestly, it seemed like a potentially awkward situation. Because remember, I really didn't know her. I would have had to explain to her who I was. Um, I didn't want to go in her house because this was during COVID, and I didn't really want to leave them on her steps either because she doesn't have the greatest physical health, and I didn't want her to fall down while she's trying to pick them up or something. So I thought, oh gosh, what am I doing here? It'd be way easier to just give them to somebody else. But still, it just felt like these flowers were meant for her. And I don't know why, but all right, I rolled with it. So I pulled up to her home, and as luck would have it, she was actually outside trying to put her walker into her car. And I was taking this as my final sign. I walked up to her. I briefly reminded her of who I was, and I just gave her the flowers. I said, I have some flowers to give away. Here you go. I thought you might like them. And she was so tickled, not just because I gave her flowers. I mean, I'm sure a little bit of that too, but because the flowers that I gave her were all yellow. And that is something that I had nothing to do with. That was just what I got, what the florist happened to give me as my free bouquet. So she was tickled that they were yellow because yellow was her husband's favorite color. And he had died almost exactly 5 years prior to that day. I mean, we were like 2 days shy of it, I think. And she just felt certain that God had something to do with this. And she said as much several times. So had I not trusted my intuition, even though I felt it was guiding me in a very odd direction, I would have deprived myself and Darlene from that really super cool experience. So start working on trusting your intuition and your guidance system, whatever you'd like to call it, and it will pay you back in spades. There are a lot of different ways that you can work on developing your intuition. One method is to kind of close your eyes and relax your body a little bit. And in fact, you know what? Do this right now, unless you're driving. If you're driving or operating heavy machinery, keep your eyes open. But if you're in a space where it's safe to do so, take a second and close your eyes and drop your shoulders and do a quick body scan, just starting at the top of your head and working down to your toes, looking for any place that you can release tension. Maybe your neck, your jaw, your shoulders. Release any tension in your belly or your hips, all the way down to your toes. And now on your own, just take 3 nice, deep belly breaths, keeping your eyes closed. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then I want you to ask yourself a question that you know the answer is yes. Something like, my favorite food is, and then whatever your favorite food is. And then ask another yes question, like, do I live in the United States? Pay close attention to the sensations in your body as you answer. What does it feel like? Does it feel light and bubbly, kind of tingly? When you get that yes answer, does it feel kind of like expansion? There's no wrong way to feel it. Just notice. And if you don't feel anything, just keep asking yourself more questions that you know the answer is yes. And now I want you to ask yourself a no question. For example, I might ask myself, Do I like green olives? That is a definite no for me. So pay attention to how you feel in your body this time. Do you feel a hard pit in your stomach? Or maybe you feel flat, like nothing at all. Ask another no question and notice how this sensation is different from the yes sensation. Okay, you can slowly open your eyes. And once you get more familiar with the sensations in your body, you can use this technique all throughout the day. What shirt should I wear today? Should I call that potential client now? Which movie should we go to tonight? Play around with it and you will get to where you trust it more and more. Um, a mentor of mine, Jennifer Jade, tells a story of when it backfired on her. She was guided to wear big rain boots, I believe, when she went on a photo shoot one day. She thought it was ridiculous. There was no rain in the forecast. It was a sunny, gorgeous day. And of course, a surprise rainstorm came up and she had these really skimpy sandals on and she wished that she'd had her boots along. So, we all get, we get burned once in a while if we don't pay attention to it. So, but yeah, paying attention to your intuition can be a great asset in your life. And finally, today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about finding your purpose. Man, how did we get here from from an elementary music teacher that ate Twinkies when she was pregnant to now we're talking about finding your purpose? But again, these are my highlights, things that I have that have helped me and my clients as we've gone through things here to be our healthiest selves. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. Have you ever reached a point in your life where you just felt stuck, or maybe you felt like things were okay, but you just felt like you were meant for more? And I'm guessing that, a lot of you have been there. Maybe you're there right now. And it's actually a pretty exciting place to be. I've had it happen multiple times in my life. The first being when I stopped teaching the first time. And more recently, when I shifted my business to allow me to do more of this, sharing my message this way. When I stepped back and allowed change and was open to receiving the insights, trusting that intuition on what's going to come next, that's when I felt the most success. So, not necessarily immediate financial success, but for sure more joy in my life. I'll go back to joy in a minute, but the first point I'd like to make regarding your finding your purpose is that it's probably not as specific as you think. Some people think that there's a very specific thing they should be doing with their life, but they just don't know what it is. And this can be a really frustrating feeling. It's almost like you knew it one time, but you just can't remember. Kind of like losing your car keys or your cell phone. Am I supposed to be a banker or a kindergarten teacher, an artist? Gosh, it's like on the tip of my tongue. And the book that helped me the most with this was The Old Soul's Guidebook by Ainsley MacLeod. Now, Ainsley specializes in past life regression and can, in his words, quote, talk to dead people. It is not necessary for you to believe in his abilities or past life regression, period. But do keep an open mind and see if any of this resonates with you. According to the guidance that Ainsley has received, our purpose in life is very broad. He lists 10 different soul types, he calls them. There's the helper, the caregiver, an educator, the thinker, creator, performer, hunter, leader, spiritualist, and transformer. And you may very well be a blend of several, but you most likely have one dominant type. And as he puts it, who you are is why you're here. So for example, it may come as no surprise that I identify partially as an educator and partially as a spiritualist with a splash of performer and creator thrown into the mix. So as an educator, I have an innate desire to teach others. If you are a teacher, it's just in you. You can't take it out. You can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't take the need to teach out of the teacher, right? So I have a need for students in some form or another. As an educator, I can also easily become long-winded, hence this podcast. So I'll try to wrap this up soon. But since I am an educator, I can fulfill my purpose in so many ways. It doesn't just mean working in the public school system or something like that. At the beginning of my time in the workforce, I was a music teacher, working a bit of that creativeness in there too. But it wasn't long before I felt unfulfilled at that and switched over to being a holistic health and nutrition coach. I loved educating people about health and nutrition, but something was missing. And so for me, since I'm also a spiritualist, I wasn't completely fulfilled until I was incorporating more of that aspect into my life as well. It doesn't always have to be your career. It just needs to be a part of your life. Which brings me back to the joy bit. There's a quote that I love that says, "The basis of life is freedom. The purpose of life is joy. And the result of life is expansion." So now might be a good time to mention that I truly believe we are not as much humans with souls as we are souls having a human experience. Humans on this planet, I believe we have free will. We make our own choices. Things aren't all predetermined, or what would be the point? So the basis of life is freedom, but the purpose of life is joy. And when we figure out how to live joyfully, so many wonderful things happen. And it's an ongoing process, not something to be checked off a list like, well, I found joy today. What should I do tomorrow? It's just something that you're going to be doing all throughout your life. And the result of that joy is expansion as a soul. So your purpose is to find joy in all you do, joy in the foods that you eat, joy in how you move your body, joy in how you take care of yourself, in your mental health and your spiritual health, joy in how you find connectedness in the world around you. So, man, we crammed quite a bit in there. But that's kind of my story and some of the things that I just, if we all can be taking care of our bodies in these ways, trusting our intuition and living out our purpose. Imagine living on a planet where that was the norm, where everybody just is like that, right? It'd be a totally different place to live. Now, no pressure. It's a progress, right? And that's part of it too. That's part of the journey, part of the path. So, yeah. Well, I think that I am going to wrap that up for today. I have a super exciting episode lined up for us next time. Super excited for that. And we'll delve into some of these things a little bit more in detail. But until then, I hope that you are all having a super fantastic day, and I will catch you again soon.